Okay. I cannot see myself, but perhaps I'm there. All right.
Hare Krishna, Damraj Prabhu, Danjot Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you so much for accepting service today, Prabhu. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Dandava Pranam, Radha Kun Mataji. It's very good to see you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
To hear you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Radha Kunda Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Vijay Lakshmi Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Gurudeva, 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 Jaya Gurudeva. Good morning, dear devotees. Thank you again, Radhakun Mataji, for giving me the chance to help today.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. I'm so grateful.
I'll begin by sharing the screen, and then we can begin with the invocation verses to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantasto Yabhadrani Vidunoti Suhrit Satam Pancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. We're continuing our reading from the first canto, 11th chapter, text 37. Tammayam manyate loko yasangam api sanginam atmaupamyana manujam yaprinvanam yato buddha. Tamayam manyate loko yasangam api sanginam atmaupamyana manujam yaprinvanam yato buddha. I'll open it up if anyone would like to repeat as well.
Tammayam manyate loko hyasangam api sanginam atmaupamyena manujam vyapranvanam yato buddha. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji.
You can try to. Tam ayam manyate loko sangam api sanginam atmaupamyena manujam vyapranavanam yato buddha. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Tamayam manyata loko hi sangam api sanginam atma upamenya manujam vyaprin vanam yata abuddha. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So I'll read the synonyms, translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Come unto Lord Krishna. I am all these common men. Manyate, do speculate within the mind. Lokaha, the conditioned souls. He, certainly. Asangam, unattached. Api, in spite of. Sanginam, affected. Atma, self. Opamyana, by comparison with the self. Manujam, ordinary man. Vyaprinvanam, being engaged in. Yataha, because. Abuddha, foolish because of ignorance. Translation. The common materialistic conditioned souls speculate that the Lord is one of them. Out of their ignorance, they think that the Lord is affected by matter, although he is unattached. Purport. The word Abuddha is significant here. Due to ignorance only, the foolish mundane wranglers misunderstand the Supreme Person, the Supreme Lord, and spread their foolish imaginations amongst innocent persons by propaganda. The Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, is the original primeval personality of Godhead. And when he was personally present before the eyes of everyone, he displayed full-fledged divine potency in every field of activities. As we have already explained in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, he is completely independent to act however he likes, but all his actions are full of bliss, knowledge, and eternity. Only the foolish mundaners misunderstand him, unaware of his eternal form of knowledge and bliss, which is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads. His different potencies work in a perfect plan of natural sequence, and doing everything by the agency of his different potencies, he remains eternally the supreme independent. When he descends to the material world by his causeless mercy to different living beings, he does so by his own potency. He is not subject to any condition of the material modes of nature, and he descends as he is originally. The mental speculators misunderstand him as the supreme person, and they consider his impersonal features as inexplicable Brahman to be all. Such a conception is also the product of conditioned life because they cannot go beyond their own personal capacity. Therefore, one who considers the Lord on the level of one's limited potency is only a common man. Such a man cannot be convinced that this personality of Godhead is always unaffected by the modes of material nature. He cannot understand that the sun is always unaffected by infectious matter. The mental speculators compare everything from the standpoint of experimental knowledge of their own selves. Thus, when the Lord is found to act like an ordinary person in matrimonial bondage, they consider him to be like one of them, without considering that the Lord can at once marry 16,000 wives or more. Due to a poor fund of knowledge, they accept one side of the picture while disbelieving the other. This means that due to ignorance only, they always think of Lord Krishna as like themselves and make their own conclusions, which are absurd and unauthentic from the version of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll read the verse again. Tamayam manyate loko hyasangam api sanginam atmo pamyana manujam vyaprinvanam yato buddha. The common materialistic conditioned souls speculate that the Lord is one of them. Out of their ignorance, they think that the Lord is affected by matter, although he is unattached. Vajnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swapatantikam. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Good morning to everyone, and thanks again for attending, for being here, and for accepting my service or giving me a chance to. Srila Prabhupada makes a point here of remarking on the word abuddha, which is significant. It's similar to buddhi in that one who has buddhi is intelligence, and one who's buddha is one who is has much intelligence. So abuddha is one who does not have so much, or maybe they have intelligence but it's covered. And so this is nice to hear that due to ignorance only, the foolish mundane wranglers misunderstand the Supreme Lord. But ultimately, we're all composed of chit. We're all composed of consciousness, and the quality of consciousness is to be illuminated. So it's nice to know that it's not our constitutional position to be in ignorance, but it's due to this covering of it. So that's refreshing. I looked up the word wranglers because Prabhupada uses it often. There are three kind of definitions, but this second definition seems to be the one Prabhupada's referring to. a person engaging in a lengthy and complicated quarrel or dispute. Lengthy because the material world is very long in a sense and it's arduous. No one complains about the duration of the spiritual world. Just yesterday, I was reading that Subala, one of Krishna's friends, even in his dreams, doesn't let go of Krishna's hand for fear of separation. So, just Krishna's friends are they don't get enough of Krishna during the daylight that they even dream of Krishna and holding his hands at night. So no one complains about length in the spiritual world. And in fact, in eternity, that's like, it's not enough. Sleeping is, it's a terrible waste of time. And if you think that it's exaggeration, just look at the lives of the saints who would sometimes forget to sleep. Our own Srila Prabhupada would sleep just 2 hours a night to translate these books for us. So there's proof positive in their lives that there's no complaining about length or duration. But here, how long is this class? How long is my shift at work? How long am I going to have to do this for? Like, we start college. It's like, oh my gosh, when can I get my degree? Or you get out a degree. It's like, all right, when can I get my raise? All right, when can I retire? It's like always a complaint about length and duration. And complicated. This is another characteristic of the material world. It's complicated. There's so much manifolding. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used the word manifold in describing in his Brahma Samhita how the material world propagates. It's just a folding of very simple ingredients. It's just Satchidananda and different capacities of Satchidananda, folding over themselves. And Sri Kapila Dev explains in Sankhya that sound is expanded by the contact of the ego in the mode of ignorance. The ego in the mode of or ego contacting the mode of ignorance expands sound and ether. And so we know that ether just folds upon itself to create air, and then that folds upon itself to create water and fire, and then earth. And so everything is just something very simple that's folded upon itself. But in a materialistic capacity, in the spiritual world, things expand also, but it's always expanding the simple ingredients of Satchidananda. And so it's complicated in the material world. And then there's also 3 modes of nature that complicate a lot. We want to feed everyone in the world, or we want everyone to be happy, but we need to wait until a committee gets together and decides that it's okay. We can't immediately act upon things. There's so much dilation between what we want and where we are right now. But in the spiritual world, that separation doesn't exist. And there's quarreling because of that. So in the material world, we all have our opinions about how things should be, and we all argue with each other from our own perspectives. But coming back to what Srila Prabhupada said, what are we wrangling? What are we're wrangling these material senses in our opinions, and we're imposing our temporary mental perspectives upon other people's temporary mental perspectives and arguing which temporary position is better, when we don't realize that the very fact that our eternal non-temporary consciousness is being affected by a temporary condition, and that's the problem. The problem isn't that one opinion is better than another or worse than another. It's that all of us are just accepting opinions as opposed to Krishna's real perspective of the world. Krishna is supervising. He's above everything, so he can see how things are clearly. But when we're in the eye of when we're in the storm, as it were, it can seem like the whole world is devastated. But somebody that's outside of the storm can see, oh, this is just 20 square miles of rain and blizzard. But look, outside of this, it's like a beautiful day. in Eugene, whereas in Portland, it might be just like, barreling down snow. So Krishna's perspective is very nice in that sense. Yeah, it's the real perspective. And then this point about spreading propaganda is worth considering too, is that we're always in the service of something superior. Unfortunately, we've accepted as superior our senses. Well, actually, we've accepted as superior mundane matter, which is in the ontology presented in the Bhagavad Gita, it's the lowest form of existence. Matter is, it's lifeless and it's acted upon by the living force. And the living force is, influenced or attracted by the supreme living being. So in the ontology or the hierarchy of nature, matter is the lowest, and we've accepted it as supreme. We're doing everything for the sake of inert matter, at the cost of friendship, at the cost of family, at the cost of our own integrity. And not only that, is that not only we ourselves have become implicated in the ever expanding and entangling material nature, but we're also spreading propaganda to convince others to accept this foolish position. So that's going on. That a lot of money and a lot of energy is being dedicated every day to spread the perspective of the materialistic agenda, which is that we can conquer and we can enjoy this world. And that if we don't yet enjoy it well, we could enjoy it better tomorrow by making use of our scientific advancements, by making use of our mundane intelligence, which variably, it is above matter, but it's not above Krishna's intelligence, and it's not above the spiritual master's intelligence. And so it's still being affected by the cloud of illusion. We can notice a mirage in the desert and point to it and say, oh, that's just a mirage. That's not a real thing. Once it's in relation to the rest of the outside world. The problem is that the entire world is a mirage. And we don't have anything else to compare it to if it's not for Krishna. If it's not for Krishna's katha, if it's not for Krishna kirtan, if it's not for the devotees that descend from the spiritual world to compare this whole material existence to a mirage in the desert, we would have nothing to compare it to. All of it would seem like the nature of things. And let me see if I found. So that's what's happening. We're in this. I can't even put my cursor on it because my cursor takes up more than a material manifestation or more than one material universe. But we are there, as the map says. We are there in this very small portion of the world that's just a mirage of Krishna's energies interacting. And Paramatma, our higher consciousness is awakening us to things. Our consciousness, our friend Krishna as Paramatma in the heart is alerting us to the precarity of our situation. Like, hey, this is kind of uncomfortable, isn't it? And we're like, yeah, this kind of is uncomfortable. And so our intelligence is inspired to look beyond one supposed problem or solution to another until eventually we've admitted, everyone that's here at 8:26 in the morning on a Sunday, we've all admitted that there's a limit to my intelligence. Why we're here repeatedly, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, is because surrender occurs throughout our lives. It doesn't only occur at one moment of our catastrophe of realizing that our materialistic way of living was not the best, but that we want to sustain our surrender now. We want to surrender every day to that, to the nectar of Krishna's instructions and the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we come to be aware of all these different things that Krishna has done just to give us an opportunity to experience what life is like without him. All of this is just all, you know, and it wasn't an effort in the way that we have to do an effort, but look at what had to be done to create this illusion that we are separate from God. Consider what was required. I mean, just understanding what's happening in this small cloud, the small corner of the spiritual sky, it's beyond all of the most brilliant scientists in the world. So, and if you don't take my word for it, you know, take Krishna Das Kaviraj's word for it. He describes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, one who knows the three Vishnus is liberated from the material world. And this is, you know, just the knowledge of this corner of the spiritual sky is beyond all the feats of the greatest intellectuals in the world. Relativity, and, you know, E equals MC squared, and that, you know, light is constant. All of that exists not even within a 1/4 of the spiritual sky, but within a fraction of the spiritual sky, a fraction of that 1/4 of the spiritual sky within the Mahatattva. And now, you know, according to quantum mechanics, you know, light isn't even constant. In quantum states, things can shift instantly. And that's Shadaputa Prabhu, or Dr. Richard Thompson. He says that the incompatibility of Big Bang theory is that it requires two other theories that are incompatible with themselves. He talks about relativity is being based on a world where light is constant and everything else is relative to the movement of light. But in quantum mechanics, things aren't relative to the movement of light. In quantum states, something can shift instantly. And because we can't really apply that to so many things, I would give the example of Iha Yasya Harer Dasye Karmana Manasagira. That Rupa Goswami says that a person that uses their tongue, their activities, and their mind in the service of Krishna is liberated even within this body. Even, you know, and it's not that it requires some materialistic process. It's not that a person is. And Prabhupada said that bhakti is the elevator that takes you immediately to devotional service, whereas in some sense, having faith in the material world requires that we go through a process of, well, first, you know, dharma. First, we should know what's right to do, and we should practice this so we can acquire some riches. We can acquire something from the world. After so much acquiring and going up and down with, you know, acquisitions and loss and acquisitions and loss, we'll get to the point of realizing, like, this is just frustrating. This working so hard just so that I can give it up and enjoy it, and then work hard again so I can get more things that ultimately are not enjoyable, to work hard in different combinations. I just, you know, I just want to be liberated from all this stuff. And so then a person like performs so much austerity that they hold back their tongue from eating unnecessarily. They hold back their mind from thinking unnecessarily. They hold back the movements of their body from moving unnecessarily. But then the demon who does all those things and just hates Krishna gets killed and attains the same thing that all of that effort was for. I mean, think about that. Like how much we're like how pointless liberation is. Because even that's not forever. Even just, I mean, what is that person ultimately saying is that I just don't want to exist anymore. But our existence is not dependent on ourselves. We're not swarat. Like Prabhupada said here, we're not swarat independent, like is mentioned in the first verse. Even our existence is dependent on Krishna. So even liberation, even denying the existence of God and just wanting to be liberated from everything depends on, you know, some involvement of bhakti, some pleasing of Paramatma, of the Supreme Soul. But you could have just developed an inimical attitude and, you know, been glorified as much as Hiranyakashipu in the Nrsimha Pranams, and then attain liberation that way by dueling with Krishna, and at least, you know, having, you know, Krishna enjoy some kind of like fighting activity. But bhakti circumvents all of that. Bhakti says, like, you know, bhakti begins in a very real position. You know, they were questioning Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, why are you just dancing and chanting like a sentimentalist. And Chaitanya admitted, you know, for us, I'm just a fool. What do I really know? My guru says that I'm a fool. And he says that like the only thing that I'm capable of doing is chanting Sri Krishna's holy names and describing his pastimes in the assembly of the devotees and dancing because it pleases Krishna to do that. That's all I'm you know, qualified for. And what's so brilliant about Krishna is that, you know, what's so amazing, one of the things that's amazing about him is that that's also ontologically true. The soul's eternal dharma, the soul's sanatana dharma is jivara swarupa hari krishnera nityadas. Its only responsibility, its only service is to serve Krishna. Now, if Krishna requires that we develop some kind of an intelligence for devotional service, let that come to pass, is what the devotee thinks. And if Krishna requires that I not manifest any intelligence, like Jada Bharata is like, oh my God, manifesting intelligence is just a problem because you get involved in everyone's life. Like, I don't want to manifest any intelligence, even though he had all of it. He was like, I don't need to manifest this. For service, I would much rather just meditate on Krishna uninterruptedly. Until he saw a king insulting someone else, and then he manifested intelligence just for the well-being of someone else and for the well-being of the king. But not in a materialistic sense, not to be self-aggrandizing. And so it's interesting that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's humility also translates to just it's not false humility that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking of. It's real humility that like, what are we really qualified for but the service of our spiritual master? What are we really inherently or ontologically qualified for? We're totally dependent in our material life on the three modes of nature and where they're tossing us around to and the results of our karma. And in spiritual life, we are dependent on the instruction of our spiritual master. We're dependent on the instruction and the orientation of those souls who are eternally occupied in pleasing Krishna and Srimati Radharani. So Srila Prabhupada mentions here that when he was present before the eyes of everyone, he displayed full-fledged divine potency in every field of activities. And it reminded me of when Krishna was present before everyone in I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time finding it. When Krishna was present before everyone in the arena of Kamsa. We reference this so much because it explains a lot. So we can wonder, how is it possible to be in front of Krishna and not recognize him? Everyone's talking about God all the time. Like, how could God hide himself? Right? Like, how could somebody be in front of him? And we have only to look at our own situation. I mean, in a sense, Krishna is hidden from us. He's beginning to reveal himself through scripture, through his devotees, through his deity manifestation. He's beginning to reveal himself in coincidences in our lives or sudden illumination in our hearts because we're dedicating ourselves to his service. So he's beginning to reveal his nature. And I mean, but here, just to read, it says, to the people in general, he appeared as the most beautiful personality. And this is in Krishna book, chapter 43. To the females, he appeared to be the most attractive male, Cupid personified, and thus he increased their lust. Spiritual. The cowherd men who were present there looked upon Krishna as their own kinsman, coming from the same village of Vrindavana. The impious Kshatriya kings who were present saw him as the strongest ruler and their chastiser. To the parents of Krishna, Nanda and Jashoda, he appeared to be the most loving child. To Kamsa, the king of the Bhoja dynasty, he appeared to be death personified. To the unintelligent, he appeared to be an incapable personality. To the yogis present, he appeared to be the supersoul. To the members of the Vrishni dynasty, which is, his family, or his forefathers, he appeared to be the most celebrated descendant. Thus, appreciated differently by different kinds of people present, Krishna entered the wrestling arena with Balaram and his cowherd boyfriends. So we could be asking ourselves, well, why did Krishna do that? Why did he? Because some things seem to be better. Like, I don't want to consider Krishna an incapable personality, not only because of the offense, but also because Krishna is the best friend of all living beings. I don't want to underestimate my friend. I don't want to think less of somebody who deserves so much consideration for my own benefit also, if not to glorify Krishna, because I would benefit by having a relationship with somebody who's so capable as Krishna. So I don't want to do that, and I don't want to be unintelligent. But then, you can think, a devotee might think, well, how can someone becomes intelligent by reading scripture and all this? But why didn't Krishna give someone the opportunity to be intelligent? Tecumseh, he appeared to be death personified. I don't want to see death personified. I want to live forever. But the answer, I'm just going to, let's see if I can remove this. Oh, Jai, we have a verse to consider. So just to answer why is, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Ye tamam prapadyante. As they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. This is a beautiful verse. It shows Krishna's broad-mindedness. He's reciprocating with everyone. The unintelligent, from one perspective, unintelligent means to value the material world more than the spiritual world. Prabhupada explained, a materialist is one who seeks pleasure outside, and a spiritualist is one who seeks pleasure inside. So an unintelligent person then would be trying to seek pleasure outside, because what is outside? Outside is the results or the expansion of Krishna's energy without direct influence of him. That's all that Maya is. Maya is things that apparently exist without Krishna. So if it doesn't have a relationship with Krishna, how can it bring Krishna pleasure? A good way of thinking of it is, imagine you have a very good friend, and your friend says, I like everything that is sweet, and I like everything that is soft, and I like everything that is the color blue. So then everything that is not sweet, and everything that is not soft, and everything that is not blue, in a sense, is useless. So if your prime focus is, and if you're going to go hang out with your friend, why would you bring anything that's green, rough, and sour? It would have no business to be with your friend. But that's actually what our business is. Our actual relationship is with Christ. That's who we're really related to forever. We're not really related to matter forever. A good example is just look at a photograph, or consider what house you were born in. It's unlikely that we look the same as any photograph was taken, unless you took one this morning. Even then it's different. But we don't look the same as a photograph from 10 years ago, and we don't live in that house where we were born and where so much comfort was found. So ashashvatam, the material world is temporary, but our real relationship is with Krishna. So an unintelligent person is a person who's trying to have a relationship with temporary things, even though that's not their nature. So Krishna's reciprocating. Krishna's saying, to an unintelligent person, I'll look incapable, because he showed up as a 16-year-old boy, apparently, just looking like a young boy. And Kamsa is this ruler that subjugated. How many demons were going to Kamsa every day and bowing? So Kamsa, I will, like we've seen from the Little Krishna animation, I can certainly kill this Krishna. Every day a different demon is showing up to Kamsa. So in a sense, like, he subjugated all these other demons that are getting killed. And And this is actually like, we may see it as aspiring devotees, what intelligence is, you know, why didn't Kamsa realize these people are subordinate to me and they're dying? So like, you know, I mean, and they look very powerful. They can do a lot of things. So I don't know. What my servants are incompetent. I may not have a very tenable position as a king if all my servants are incapable of doing what I want. So that example of how we all see Krishna as his reciprocation. And it works both ways. This is nice because Krishna is he's still putting the ball in our court. As he'll tell Arjuna later, after all of this that I've said to you, you know, you act as you'd like. Krishna, our freedom is so respected by Krishna that it deserves our attention. What we are free to do, it is worth a further analysis. Just considering how much Krishna respects it, we should, you know, be alerted to it. You know, freedom, yeah, and what is possible with that freedom. So we've been brought into Prabhupada's school, and like the Bhagavatam says in the beginning, it's against cheating religion. Today, we'll have the immense benefit of getting to listen to Krishna Katha from His Grace Amarendra Prabhu. And in one of his classes, Amarendra Prabhu says that cheating works both ways. Because in one sense, cheating is that you deserve $1 billion, and I try to cheat you and say that here's 100. So the world is cheating us in that way. The world is cheating us in that way because we all belong to Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. And so Srila Prabhupada has given us the opportunity now to serve Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Rai, and all of the 6 Goswamis and all the assembly of those devotees. So to my knowledge and to the knowledge of my Guru Janas and to the knowledge of Srila Prabhupada, who is the well-wisher of the entire world, and to the knowledge of Krishnadas Kaviraj, there is no greater thing to be gained than service to the servant of the servant of the servant of Sri Sri Radha Krishna. And Bhagavatam, thanks to Srila Prabhupada's purports, is claiming that at every page. That Krishna is the supreme person, and that there's no greater thing to gain than service to his servants. There's nothing. Shiva claims this to his wife, Parvati. Everyone is declaring this at all times, and Bhagavatam is not making light out of it. However, other scriptures, Amarendra Prabhu says, are cheating us in a sense because they're enticing us with the position of Indra, which is temporary. How many Indras are there in a day of Brahma? And how many days of Brahma are there? How many Brahmas are there in the material worlds? And consider that even Brahma is accepting the position of a devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just to chant constantly the names of Krishna, and doesn't even require direct darshan of Jagannath. Jagannath is personally coming to him to bring him prasad because all he wants to do is just chant the names of Krishna. So what good is the position of Indra and Brahma ultimately? How is that not cheating us to tempt the jiva with a temporary position? So if Brahma and Indra are not worthy of our attention, why is being a servant of any materialist worth our attention? And this is the kind of propaganda that Srila Prabhupada is speaking against. It's a foolish imagination. The world is full of foolish imaginations, and ultimately, you know, here later on, Prabhupada describes that they, what is this? When the Lord is found to act like an ordinary person in matrimonial bondage, they consider him to be like one of them. And how are we? Envious. We're envious and we're considering ourselves to be the enjoyer. And because we can't make room in our intellect for somebody else being a greater enjoyer, we envy. God cannot exist, and much less a person that enjoys this much. And that's the propaganda that's being spread in the world. This is the whole agenda behind atheism. It's not intellectually sound. And Prabhupada explains we don't even know philosophy in this world. Philosophy is not just loving knowledge. I mean, knowledge, what we call Wikipedia knowledge, just knowing about when a celebrity was born and when they signed a deal. We consider that knowledge, but that's not knowledge. That's just details of illusion. That's just details of something that's false. Real knowledge is Sankhya, understanding what are the constituents of this world so that I can so I can see myself as separate from this world, so I can begin to develop real knowledge, which are the 64 arts of devotional service. What pleases God? What pleases my guru? How can I actually be happy? This is, I mean, Krishna describes what the constituents of knowledge are in the Bhagavad Gita. It says, accepting a spiritual master, humility, cleanliness, compassion. He lists how many things are actually part of knowledge. He says everything else is illusion, Krishna says. So how much are we propagating illusion by talking about like these other things that have nothing to do with our well-being? So we're here today because of this great invitation. Oh, and Amarendra Prabhu said the second cheating is the reverse. The second cheating is thinking that I have done very little, but I deserve a lot for it. So I have done $1 worth of work, but I want to get 100 for it. So that's the second. So Bhagavatam is also guiding us to look at what these devotees did, to look at what devotional service is worth, to protect us from the Sahajiya attitude, just to protect us from not undervaluing Krishna. Like the unintelligent saw him as someone incapable. We don't want to be unintelligent. So Bhagavatam is protecting us in both ways. It's telling us the highest goal to aspire for is the service of Sri Radha and Krishna. And this is how valuable it is. So let me take you through a tour of just a handful of souls who are all of our gurus. What have they done to please Krishna? And this is and look at love. Look at what real love is like. Real love is praying like Kunti Maharani, that let calamities come again and again so that I may be reminded of you again and again. You know, let my consciousness flow to you always. Let my thoughts always go to you like the river Ganges always flows to the sea. Let me be as resolute as Dhruva Maharaj, just a child. Let me not depend on, becoming an adult or like just becoming an older person by material calculation to then do things. Let me now, where I am, accept surrender. Like Kulashekara Maharaj. Now that I'm thinking of you, Krishna, please, you can end all this now. One of my Guru Janas, he asks us, whenever he thinks of Kulashekara Maharaj, it's not Kulashekara Maharaj, who wrote the Mukunda Mala Stotra. I think it's Kulashekara Maharaj. If somebody would like.
Bilvamangal Thakur?
No, Mataji, it's who wrote who said the verse, let the swan of my
Kulashekar Alvar Prabhu. Kulashekar Maharaj.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Mataji, for bringing Bilva Mangala Thakur to mind. Kulashekar Maharaj was saying, so one of my Guru Jana says, do we have this attitude that today we are willing to give our lives to Krishna like that, saying, Krishna, now that I'm chanting your name and now that I'm thinking of you, in this moment, take me. I can't guarantee that I'll be thinking of you at some other point. So now we should want to develop that attitude that every day we are ready to seek either Krishna's death, to see Krishna as the holy name, to see Krishna as our deity, as our guru, as our prabhus, as all the devotees around us. as our children, if we have them, we should want to develop that attitude. Thank you. So with all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to the Assembly of Devotees. Thank you for giving me a chance to be here with you all this morning around Bhagavatam. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dhanavad Pranam. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for all wonderful narrations. As always, you do, Prabhuji. It is so sweet to hear from you all the time. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. So, Prabhu, whatever you shared, it is very nice, and especially you shared, from Krishna book, various how various groups of people understood Krishna in different ways when he entered the arena of that restless arena. It was very beautiful description given in Krishna book, and also from as Narottam Viraj Prabhu shared from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:43-17 Prabhu. And I very nice, very beautiful. So Prabhu, I have a small inquiry that see, people when Krishna was present here, unfortunately, and some are not able to recognize him as Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? So initially, when we read Bhagavad Gita, even Arjuna treated him as his friend. So that's some initial chapters of Bhagavad Gita. He was under the impression that Krishna was his friend only. But it is mentioned in the 10th canto, 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Then Krishna, finally, after Gita Upadesham is done, then actually Arjuna realized that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 12:13, he says to Krishna, right, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you are ultimate, about the purest, and everything you say is like you are eternal, transcendental, original person and everything. So Prabhu, my question is, this Gita was told on the battlefield of Kurukshetra in between both the, in the midst of both the armies, right? So Duryodhan was there actually. So did he not got the opportunity, did he not get the opportunity to hear from Krishna at that point of time? And how do we understand? Because many people were there on the battlefield, and it happened in the midst of the battlefield in front of everyone. Like how we have gotten an opportunity to hear Bhagavad Gita message from Krishna now through the scripture, but people are they're present, they're manifested there, they're present over there. So did they not get the opportunity to hear Bhagavad Gita, like Duryodhan and other 99 sons of Dhritarashtra? They didn't get an opportunity to hear, Prabhu.
Yeah.
How do we understand? Because they are there in the battlefield and but they're not given opportunity to hear.
Thank you for your question, Mataji. That's a very nice question. Would any of the assembled devotees like to respond to it? Any of Prabhu's Matajis like to respond?
Well, it is not true that Arjun was not aware. Srila Prabhupada has mentioned it many times in his commentaries that he is asking this for our benefit. It is specifically mentioned in 4th chapter when he is questioning Lord Krishna. How could you tell this to the sun god? I think in purport of 4.5 or 4.67, somewhere there you can read. So that's my understanding. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Paramakaruna Prabhu.
Thank you, Paramakarana Prabhuji. I understand that totally what you said, I accept it. But my question is about Duryodhana. So Duryodhana was present on the battlefield. When everybody else were present on the battlefield, they didn't get an opportunity to hear from Krishna, same like Arjuna. So that's what my question.
Mataji, shall I tell something? Especially the Duryodhana and his brothers did not want to Krishna and his presence. They are in illusion Sri Krishna is only helping Pandavas, Arjuna. Because of that, he did not hear, I think.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. for
But
your
I don't.
sharing. So I want to hear from more devotees. So, Jai Prabhu, Jai Sachin Prabhu, and Narottam Vilas Prabhu, would you want to share anything on this regard?
Duryodhana was told by many individuals, such as Bhishma Pitama, and Vidur, etc., and he himself saw when he tried to bind Krishna that Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he was blinded by his attachment to the kingdom, just like Dhritarashtra. The three people we know for sure heard were Arjun, right, Sanjaya, and Dhritarashtra. Arjun, Dhritarashtra, through the mercy of Vyasadeva on his disciple Sanjay. So, but why did Dhritarashtra not hear? He heard, but it didn't change his mindset because of his attachments to that which is not Krishna, or that which is not Krishna's desire. So, from my understanding, the three people who heard outside of Krishna who's speaking is Arjun, Sanjay, and Dhritarashtra. But Duryodhana knew about Krishna and his divinity, but he chose to neglect it, so he could not hear. Just like many people hear the Bhagavad Gita, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a transformation in the heart in everybody who hears the Gita. Right? That's what Krishna is saying. Ye tamam papadyante.
So even though people understand Krishna's divinity, but they're not, because of their envy, they're not able to understand his supreme position. Right?
Because of the envy, and I think it really comes to identification, of ahankara, which is I. And ultimately, when you, like, for example, hear Lord Vishnu's, in the Chaturshloki of Bhagavatam, when Lord Vishnu speaks, he says, aham, I am, and you are. But you and us are all conditional on the existence of aham. We're conditional living beings. Whereas Bhagwan is like Dhanraj Prabhu and Srila Prabhupada say is Swarat, as per 1.1.1, Janmadya Shayataha. So, in Sanskrit, that term I, when it's applied to myself, actually has the same root as ahankara. So it's, this idea of I'm that which I'm not really. That's the problem. And, here, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu says it very nicely, right? When he talks about how Dhritarashtra heard, but why did it not, was Dhritarashtra not uplifted? Because he had so many other attachments to that which is not Krishna's desire. So envy can be one thing, but I think, we know from explanations from, the 13, 14, 15, that our problem is misidentification of what my real nature is. And therefore that's a reason why we can't hear things. So that's the first thing that Srila Prabhupada will always tell. I remember reading Prabhupada Memories that a devotee who had been disciple of Srila Prabhupada for like 40 years, he said, Srila Prabhupada, the first thing you told us is that we're not the body. And I'm still trying to understand that 40 years later, in spite of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and reading all your books. It's a very hard conception to overcome. It's identification of who we are. So Duryodhana felt like he was the prince, he was the king, he was the rightful heir. And so he acted in that way. And he could, even if Krishna had put up a loudspeaker and spoken, do you think Duryodhan, it would have changed his heart?
No, Prabhu.
You know, like when people get into arguments, they can hear, but they're not necessarily listening. They can do the physical act of hearing, but not necessarily the intellectual, emotional act of listening.
Yes, Prabhu, it's making a lot of sense for me. Thank you so much, Prabhu. But the point I liked is like, how many people, many people might read actually Bhagavad Gita, Gita Upadesham now also, but how many people are able to understand it and how many people are able to accept Krishna's divinity and Krishna's position, right? So thank you so much, Prabhu. My question is answered. Thank you so much. Hare
I
Krishna.
mean, can even I understand, not let alone others, am I really understanding Krishna's, supreme nature? That he's the absolute truth? I may pay lip service to it, but do I understand it? Do I live it? No, I don't. So my view is, rather than me thinking others are not understanding, my thinking is, why am I not understanding, right? Like the 10th offense of the holy name.
Yes, correct, Prabhu.
Yeah. At least, but very wonderful question.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. The question arose out of the sweet narrations given by Dhanaraj Prabhu. So I'm so happy to hear. Thank you so much, Jai Sachin Prabhu. Thank you so much also, Paramakarana Prabhu. Thank you also, Vijay Lakshmi Mataji, for sharing your realizations. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Other
Hare
questions or comments for Prabhuji?
Hare Krishna, Dhanesh Prabhu, thank you so much for the wonderful, amazing, unique style of presentation, as you always do, Prabhu. Really appreciate it, Prabhu. So many wonderful points you brought it up. Thank you. One thing which I want to add on, not add on, Prabhuji has everything mentioned, but Krishna has given, what to say, a condition or the eligibility to understand Bhagavad Gita, the 4th chapter itself. As Prabhupada mentioned, in that particular section, he says, Bhaktu si misakha cheti. Only one who is my devotee and a friend can understand these instructions. So as Prabhuji mentioned, just mentioned, if Krishna put a loudspeaker and Duryodhana heard that, it wouldn't make any sense to him. Even Dhritarashtra, it didn't, even after he heard the entire Bhagavad Gita, did not, make any change for him because it's not in the foot of the bhakta. So, yeah, that's what I think.
Oh,
Thank you,
thank
Prabhu.
you
Thank you.
for reminding such a
Prabhuji.
wonderful words. Yeah, Krishna always says that, right? He should not have envy, and he should be a friend of Krishna. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dhanraj Prabhu. It is very wonderful explanation and narration about Krishna's 64 kinds of services. Devotees has to know that also. It is very wonderful. And Kamsa dynasty, you narrated very well. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Any other comments or questions for Prabhuji? Dharaj Prabhu, you look very blissful and peaceful there in LA. Is that right? LA?
I right now I feel like I'm in your company. I'm remembering that I'm in Los Angeles, but the blissfulness is just still being with Portland Sangha.
You've still got the big scarf, so it means that there must be some element of this winter storm in LA as well.
It's a bit cold here.
But I'm glad that you're in a comfortable place where you can peacefully do your Shastric studies and your japa and your service to Guru and Srila Prabhupada. We value your presence, and it's kind of interesting. ISKCON Hillsborough is small, but now we have devotees from LA and from South India zooming in for Bhagavatam lectures that they're giving. It's very, very nice.
It feels to me a testament of how wonderful the devotees that are serving Nitai Sachinandana are, and how much I personally feel fortunate to be in your company.
So, Vanchakalpa Drupyacha, Kripo Sindhaviyevacha, Patitanam Pavnebhyo, Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. So, like Dhanraj Prabhu Ji was saying, today we have His Grace Amarendra Prabhu, due to circumstances, not physically at the temple, but via Zoom. Please come. It's kind of nice. We all heard Swami Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj together at the temple, and I think a lot of devotees found it very meaningful. It's just a sangha of devotees, and hearing in that is nice. And that's the example of Bhagavatam as well, how the sages of Namashranya heard. So please come if you can. Stay safe. There's still some ice, so be careful when you travel around. So we'll see you at 11:30. Thank you, Dhanraj Prabhu. Take care. Hope to see you on the Zoom meeting if you can. The Mataji sent the link in the temple email, so you can use that link. Okay.
Thank you, Jai Sachinandana Prabhu.
Prabhuji, could you send me that link today's this lecture
For Amarendra Prabhu? Yes, we can send. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care, Dhanraj Prabhu. We remember you and miss you.
Likewise. Hare
And
Krishna.
your wonderful cookies.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol. Take care. Say Haribol to your dad or all glories to the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. I will do.
Bye-bye.